Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. You better believe we're going to get Jasmyne Cannick's point of view on that shortly. But you ever wonder what's driving so much of the enthusiasm around the Harris Walz campaign? Well, I'll give you a hint. There's a poll that says that count them, half of Gen Z voters support Harris, and only 1/3 back Trump. Half of Gen Z voters say that they'll vote for Vice President Kamala Harris in November, while only 1/3 say that they'll vote for former President Trump, a bigger gap for the Democratic nominee than some other polls this year, but not quite at 2020 levels for the party, according to a new survey of registered voters under the age of 30. The results of the NBC News Stay Tuned Gen Z poll is kind of a cool name. Powered by SurveyMonkey, of course. It comes as young voters grapple with new economic and cultural challenges in 2024, including rising costs and concerns about debt that are prompting delays to some critical life events. Another 1 in 10 respondents to the poll said that they will not vote in the presidential election. That's 1 in 10. Harris is backed by 60% of young voters who say that they're almost certain that they will cast a ballot in the presidential election. That figure pulls in line with the 60% of 18 to 29-year-olds won by Joe Biden in the 2020 election against Trump. And it's starkly different than Biden's results in some 2024 polls before he dropped out of the race, of course. But now, in a Harris-Trump race, the gender gap among Gen Z voters is also significant. Young women saying that they are going to vote for Harris for president by 30 points, 3-0. Young men also said that they favor Harris, but by only 4 points over Trump. There is no significant difference between the two groups in terms of their enthusiasm to vote. And so we are absolutely going to get a point of view from our two guests in a moment. But I also want to take this opportunity to remind you to download the KBLA app to listen to us live or on demand, or you can simply tell Alexa to play KBLA Talk 1580. There are so many issues that are important to our families, important to our communities. And so from the White House to your house, here on KBLA, we are committed to passing the mic to experts in the field and engaging in critical conversations with leaders on the front lines. And so consider us a trusted source of information that matters to you. And so be sure to download that KBLA app. And while you're doing stuff, I want to encourage you to pick up my new book, Kamala, The Motherland and Me. It came out on July 23rd. I couldn't have ever predicted the timing of all of this, divine timing to say the least. But it is an opportunity to re-examine some of our assumptions about Madam Vice President, the continent of Africa, and ourselves. I had a chance to cover Vice President Harris on her historic trip to Africa. We were in Ghana, Tanzania, and Zambia, and the trip was so compelling. When I came back and looked through my notes, I knew that it had to live on the page. The story had to live on the page. And so I rolled up my sleeves and got to work for a little over a year and cranked out what I hope is some of my best work yet. And so you can go on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, you can go to Malik Books in Culver City if you're in LA. And most places where books are sold, and pick up a copy of Kamala, the Motherland and Me. Really excited about that. When we come forward, we have two marvelous guests who are no stranger to me. We'll be joined with Jasmyne Cannick. She's an on-air contributor and an activist and journalist in her own right. And we'll be talking to her about what's trending in not just the national political headlines, but what's trending in some of the state and local political headlines. You're listening to First Things First with Dominique DiPrima. I'm your guest host, Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey. More on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
Tavis is under attack. I can't get his radio station on my transistor. I'm getting the Asian station that he's right around, but they're not letting KBLA 1580 come in. I'm not getting the black man. So let Tavis know he's under attack. Cyber attack, racist attack, fascist attack, but he's under attack. And they doing something to disrupt his radio station so they won't get the truth out to us.
Hey, it's Tavis. We appreciate all that love, let me tell you, because we may very well be under attack on all sides. Just because you don't believe in conspiracy theories don't mean they ain't after you. But in reality, sometimes stuff happens with the signal from the studio to the tower, which sends our programming to your car, home, office, or your transistor radio. But when you download the KBLA 1580 app, the sound is clear as a bell all day, all night, anywhere in the world, from Los Angeles to Lagos. So we love all of our listeners, no matter how you hear us. But when you download the KBLA 1580 app and hear that richness, you'll wonder why you didn't do it sooner. But don't take my word for it. Download the KBLA 1580 app right now. I'm Tavis Smiley, and I approve this message.
Spray and scrub, but the soap scum in my bathtub is still there.
I spray and scrub, but the burnt sauce on my stovetop sticks around.
Sprays can leave grime behind, but Mr. Clean Ultra Foamy Magic Eraser combines the scrubbing power of an eraser with the cleaning power of Dawn to melt away tough messes on contact.
Just wet, squeeze, and erase.
Stop spraying, start erasing, and clean with more magic than ever with Ultra Foamy Magic Eraser.
Mr. Clean, Mr. Clean.
Hey, checking in?
This is not just your flu shot appointment at Walgreens.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is getting your entire family vaccinated in one trip.
Hey, Mom?
And a snack on the way out. Get flu shots for everyone in your family, together. Schedule appointments online today. This is wellness made easy. Walgreens.
Vaccine subject to availability and for ages 3+. State and health-related restrictions may apply.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer whenever I want?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. 94% of Sleep Number smart sleepers report better sleep. And now, during our biggest sale of the year, save 50% on the Sleep Number limited edition smart bed. Plus free home delivery on select smart beds when you add any base. Ends Labor Day. To find a store near you, visit sleepnumber.com.
Tips to help improve basic steps for building a budget in 2024. Building a budget can help you achieve and reach your financial goals. With a budget, you can keep track of your spending, avoid and get out of debt, limit overspending, pay bills on time, and build solid savings habits. What's the best way to get started? Figure out how much to set aside for expenses, like rent, mortgage, bills, groceries, and entertainment. Understanding your past financial habits can help you make the proper adjustments for your budget. Adjusting to a budget can take time as you work to find the right balance, but keep working on it. For more financial health tips, visit chase.com or stop by a local branch. This segment is sponsored by J.P. Morgan Chase & Company.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DiPrima on First Things First.
You're listening to First Things First with Dominique DiPrima. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, guest host. You can find me weekdays at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern as host and chief White House correspondent for KBLA's A More Perfect Union. But speaking of a more perfect union, we got a big old election coming up. In fact, we're in the final stretch before that November election, and I was just talking about Gen Z voters and how Gen Z voters, particularly Gen Z women, are really powering the Harris Walls campaign in some pretty significant numbers. Here to help us unpack that and so much more, I want to welcome our guest this hour, Jasmyne Cannick. She's a strategist, award-winning Gen Z journalist, and on-air contributor, known for her commentary on politics, race, and contemporary social issues. Very unique perspective, grounded in both journalistic integrity and cultural sensitivity. Having earned a lot of accolades over the years. Please welcome Jasmyne Cannick to the show.
Hey, good morning. I'm not Gen Z, though. I'm Gen X.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking...
You said the Gen Z journalist. I was like, oh, he's just some years away. No, I represent Gen X, the best generation.
That's right. That's right. I was reading Gen X, but I was thinking Gen Z. So my apologies. But welcome to the show. And then speaking of Gen Z, Nabou Ramu, did I get that right?
It's Nabou Ramu.
Nabou Ramu, welcome to First Things First. Nabou Ramu is the griot Afrocentric journalist and covers all things art, all things culture, all things business. The griot word is an album for archiving and preserving time and memories with beats and your jazz and classical artist, and you're here with us today, and so thank you for joining us.
Peace and blessings, everyone. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so let's get into it. The polls are saying that Gen Z is really powering this Harris Walls campaign pretty significantly, though not quite yet at the 2020 levels for the Biden-Harris campaign. Jasmyne, I want to go to you first. This is not your first rodeo. You've worked on and covered a lot of elections. This time next week, it'll be the day after, the morning after the much anticipated Harris-Trump debate. What do these numbers, what insights do these numbers offer the candidates that should inform how they show up at that debate?
I mean, well, first of all, good morning, everyone. I look at a lot of polls, even as a political strategist, still with a side eye, especially after a lot of the blunders we've had in previous elections. I think we all have to keep in mind that different generations have different voting habits. And one of the things that I'm constantly working on as a campaign strategist and consultant is, how to reach different voters where they are, right? The same way you reach Gen X is not the same way you reach Gen Z voters. But what the numbers, if you do want to go by the polls, what the numbers do show is that while there may be a lot of chit-chat on social media, that chit-chat doesn't always show up on Election Day. And so I think that's really where the challenge is going to be, because as I tell people all the time, likes and retweets aren't votes.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, who is most likely when we're in PDI, when we're looking at political data, when we're, doing voter contact, who are the voters who are most likely to vote, right? And that's still in America tends to be older voters, right? So like our parents' generation, and now as a lot of Gen Xers have moved into their 40s and some into their 50s, us, Gen Xers are sort of at the top of the list in terms of most likely folks to vote. Not saying that Gen Z isn't coming out in force, not saying that they're not online and not, talking about being excited about the election, but the numbers just still haven't shown that the talk matches the walk.
Nabou, Ramu, I want to give you a chance to jump in. I mean, you are our resident Gen Z expert. How does this track for you? I mean, I think Jasmine has a point. That different generations, respond differently. When it comes to elections, and boomers, have shown up time and time and time and time again. But Gen Z folks, some people think they might even be a little sometimey, right? Sometimes they're engaged, sometimes they're not. Does that track with you?
I disagree. I think that a lot of people see Gen Z as teenagers, but right now, Gen Z, we're between the ages of 18 to almost 30 years old. A lot of us are young adults, and we have issues that are concerning to us that I just don't think are being addressed at this time. We see people campaigning for, like Kamala Harris has decided that she didn't want to pull out of Israel, and she has stood firm in her decision to back Israel and to continue to give them weapons and support. And a lot of Gen Z people are concerned about the lives and the future of the Palestinian people. A lot of Gen Z is concerned about renting. Like, she had proposed, she talked about a tax credit for first-time home buyers. A lot of us who've been in America for generations, we won't be first-time home buyers. Our parents were homeowners. For some of us, our grandparents were homeowners. What's important to us right now, especially if you live in LA, I also am a renter in Nashville, rent is too expensive. A lot of people who are in the Gen Z population are experiencing unemployment at this moment. I'm on Twitter and Instagram, and every time I'm looking around, I see my peers announcing their layoffs. We can't get jobs. We can't afford our groceries. Even though she talked about putting a stop to price gouging, it's just so many issues that just aren't being addressed. I think that the Gen Z is being neglected, and they only use us because we're social media savvy to create memes. We might joke on social media about who we may or may not like, but our issues aren't being addressed. And I think that Donald Trump has done a good job at getting to Gen Z, which could hurt Kamala Harris's campaign, because he's been sitting down with YouTubers and podcasters. And yesterday, the New York Times published an article saying that Donald Trump is going for the bro vote. And I know we talked about which gender is leaning towards which political party, but he just did an interview with, I think I just went out. He just did an interview. Okay. It sounded weird on my end. But yeah, but some of his interviews that just went viral on YouTube has really wooed the hearts of some people. And I think that they just showed a lot of his humanity that Gen Z was attracted to. Gen Z just doesn't trust politicians. You can't just say, oh, I'm a Democrat, oh, I'm a Republican, you need to vote for me. We're not afraid of Donald Trump because we've already experienced him as president before. And people can actually say that they felt like things were better when he was in office. A lot of people are disappointed in the Democratic Party. And honestly, if we lived in a different world, we would actually prefer possibly a different party, like not a binary system, but possibly someone like Dr. Cornel West.
So, Jasmine, I want to give you a chance to respond to that. I mean, there were so many things that were shared there, and I would be remiss if I didn't talk about just sort of the advent of mis and disinformation that's out there, right? And there are actors out there that are peddling in mis and disinformation that's targeting our community. Particularly targeting, Black men in our community with some success. And so, Jasmine, I want to give you a chance to respond to that.
You know what? I think that everything she said just tracks in terms of the way that Gen Zers look at things, right? So more likely to support a third-party candidate, less trusting of sort of traditional establishments, right? More likely to be reached with any campaign message through social media rather than, let's say, email or direct mail, right? I'm reminded of there's a mayor that I worked for, and when she would get up and speak sometimes at community events and talk about voter engagement, she would often tell this story about how, do you ever wonder why there are more senior centers than youth centers in communities? Because seniors vote. And that, a lot of electeds and folks have a tendency to focus on the folks who keep them in office, right, who vote. What I didn't hear from this young lady was like, but we're going to the polls. Thank you, Nabou. I heard a lot of what we don't like and what we're seeing, but not necessarily that we're definitely headed to the polls. And so headed to vote. And so going back to what I was saying earlier is my point that, look, I'm not saying that Gen Z isn't engaged and doesn't have a view on what they see in this world and what's going on. But when you look at the numbers, when you look at past voter turnout, that hasn't reflected in, numbers that rival, let's say, their parents and grandparents at the polls. So I'm not saying that as campaigns, of course, we focus on Gen Zers and we focus on millennials as well. But we also, like I said, we put our money, and when you're talking about a campaign, as you know, you put your money where your voters are most likely to turn out, who you're most, the people are who are most likely to be there, who are going to show up and make that vote. And I just don't see that in 2024 as being Gen Zers yet.
When we come forward, I want to pick up on something that you said, Jasmine, talking about how Gen Z folks are more likely to be engaged through social media than a lot of other forms of media. We've been talking this morning about NBC News report that half of Gen Z voters support Harris and 1/3 back Trump, according to one of the latest polls. We are unpacking this with Jasmyne Cannick, campaign strategist and award-winning Gen X journalist and on-air contributor, as well as Nabou Ramu, the griot Afrocentric journalist and our resident Gen Z expert. You're listening to First Things First with Dominique DiPrima. I'm your guest host, Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey. More when we come forward.
A safe place to go loud. A great place for progressive politics. KBLA Talk 1580.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Mike Moore. Now here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Vice President Kamala Harris is expected to announce an economic proposal to help small businesses today. She'll be on the campaign trail in New Hampshire. Hotel workers around the country are threatening to expand their strike after their union and hotel companies failed to reach a contract deal. Around 10,000 people hit the picket lines in places like San Francisco, Seattle, and Boston during the long Labor Day holiday. A surprising quiet hurricane season continues. A named storm hasn't been formed in the Atlantic Basin since Ernesto on August 12th. Researchers at Colorado State University say the last time that the Atlantic had no named storms from between August 13th and September 3rd was in 1968. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Hey DQ fans, mark your calendars. Thursday, July 25th is Miracle Treat Day 2024. $1 or more of every Blizzard treat sold at participating DQ locations benefits your local children's hospital. Remember, July 25th, only at DQ. Happy, taste good.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
I'm a bad man.
Francis Tiafoe is edging closer to his first Grand Slam tennis championship. The 26-year-old African-American star advanced to the semifinals of the U.S. Open. Tiafoe was leading Grigor Dimitrov of Bulgaria when Dimitrov quit the match in the fourth set because of an injury. Tiafoe had a 4-1 lead in the fourth set and had won 2 of the first 3 sets. The native of Hyattsville, Maryland, will play fellow American Taylor Fritz in Friday's semifinals. Tiafoe is trying to become the first African-American male to win the U.S. Open since Arthur Ashe in 1968. He's also trying to become the first American male to win the U.S. Open since Andy Roddick in 2006. Mookie Betts hit a 3-run homer in the 10th inning to spark the Dodgers to a 6-2 win over the Angels Tuesday night in Anaheim. A sellout crowd of over 44,000 filled Anaheim Stadium to see the return of Dodger star Shohei Ohtani. The Japanese icon played his first 6 seasons with the Angels. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
We're not just a thermometer recording and broadcasting popular opinion. We aim to be a thermostat, transforming the conversation about climate justice in our community. This is KBLA Talk 1580.
For all of us, this generation and the next, there is simply no place in our lives for litter. And yet, it's everywhere we look. And unfortunately, it does belong to all of us. So, let's come together and create a litter-free, clean California, once and for all. Remember to properly dispose of your trash and recycling. Secure truckloads with tarps to keep debris from flying out. Clean out your car when you're at a gas station. Take pride in your community by organizing a cleanup event. Or join a cleanup event near you. Zero litter is the goal. Join us at cleanca.com. That's cleanca.com. Let's do it together. Brought to you by Caltrans. cleanca.com.
Are you wet shaving? You'll get razor bumps.
Nah, Pops, I'm good with Gillette Skin Guard. How long you been growing that beard Mama hates anyway?
Since 77. I shaved and got ingrown so bad.
That's why I use the Gillette Skin Guard razor, face scrub, shave gel, and moisturizer. So I don't have to worry about new razor bumps or shaving irritation.
Gillette Skin Guard, huh? Your mama's gonna love this one.
The best a man can get keeps getting better with Gillette Skin Guard. Buy now at a retailer near you.
Watch out! You got me! The galaxy is safe once again.
In the pretend universe, kids play with pretend guns. In the real world, it's up to us to make sure they don't get their hands on a real gun. If you have a gun in the house, keep it locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where everybody is somebody and nobody is a stranger. You belong here.
You're listening to First Things First with Dominique DiPrima. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, filling in for Dominique DiPrima. You can keep the party going and listen to my show weekdays at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. It's called A More Perfect Union. From the White House to your house, we pride ourselves in bringing you expert analysis and compelling interviews, dare I say even critical interviews from leaders on the front lines. I am joined here with Jasmyne Cannick, who is a veteran political strategist and a Gen X journalist. I got that right. We're also joined with Nabou Ramu, who is our resident Gen Z expert. Also an Afrocentric journalist, and we are delighted to have you both here with us. We've been really zeroing in on this NBC News report about a recent poll that shows that Gen Z voters are tracking closer to support for Harris compared to Trump, and we're trying to unpack that and kind of get a sense of what is driving that, and it's been a very insightful conversation this morning. I want to pick up on a thought that Jasmyne Cannick shared just a moment ago, reminding us that Gen Z, for example, is more likely to sort of ingest information from social media compared to other forms of media. And Nabou, I want to give you a chance to clarify for us. With that being the case, doesn't that put Gen Z voters at a greater risk for mis and disinformation? And what can our listeners do, Gen Z and across the board, to better identify and push back against mis and disinformation?
I think Miss Jasmyne Cannick was correct when she said that Gen Z are more attracted to getting our information from social media than anywhere else. And it does put us at a greater risk for misinformation. But I think that we experience misinformation from all sides, from the Republican side and from the Democratic side. So I think that it's important for us to, as Gen Z, one, to listen to direct interviews from different candidates, go on to different sites like UPenn, University of Pennsylvania, has released lots of studies and graphs and data related to different budgeting policies that each political candidate has presented to the public. We have to just go directly to the source. And I feel like we even have to figure out ways to combat misinformation from our quote-unquote trusted news sites as well, because a lot of our news organizations are perceived as biased to me. And so I think that it's just like, it's hard for us to get real information about what a political candidate is really about. And I think that, like, that also can contribute to the distrust and the way that we show up in the polls. And I think that it's actually incorrect that Gen Z doesn't want to vote or that we don't make it to the polls. I think it's just like, at the end of the day, it comes down to a moral perspective. Like, I feel like I'm losing integrity as an individual if I go to the polls and vote for a candidate that doesn't actually resonate with me down to my core and that doesn't align with my core values. And a lot of Gen Z, we don't want to put our vote in the hands of someone just because of fear. I think it's a lot of fear mongering. Like, if you don't vote for this political candidate, then you're like, they have this one meme going around on social media, like the AKA or the KKK. Like, I don't want neither one of them in office. Like, why is that my only option? And I think that the older generations have put themselves in this hamster wheel of like, our vote matters, and we can't do, if you don't vote, then you are putting the country backwards or we're not pushing it forward. And we just don't believe that. I just feel like a lot of Gen Z feels like all of it is the same. The Republicans, the Democrats, they're all one bird, two different wings.
Mm-hmm. Jasmine, do you think that do you think Project 2025 is as great a threat as Democrats have been saying, and even many Republicans? I mean, we just saw John McCain's son throw his support behind Vice President Kamala Harris. Over 200 Republicans that came out of the Bush and Romney and McCain camp threw their support behind Kamala Harris. Is Project 2025 just a boogeyman, or does it really pose an existential threat to so many things that leaders of this country across the political spectrum have revered and celebrated for many years?
Okay, well, a couple of things. One, before I jump into that, I just wanna go back to what Nabou said, because I feel like, sis, you proved my point. I do agree with you that Gen Zers and millennials, to some extent, I think millennials would agree with this, and probably even some Gen Xers who feel really strongly, yeah, they do feel like they're voting. Sometimes their only choices are to vote against their values or their moral codes. which goes back to my point again about who is showing up to vote, okay? Because even in that beautiful explanation, I didn't hear, but we're going to be showing up to vote. I heard all the reasons why we don't like to vote and what our choices are and how distrustful we are of the system and the political parties that we have to choose from. And that's what I was saying at the beginning of this segment, that one of the main issues with a lot of Gen Zers and to some extent younger millennials is this distrust of the two-party system, this distrust of politicians. And this was a very big issue prior to President Biden taking a step back, which was one of the issues brewing within the Democratic Party in terms of how to excite people about the party to get folks to come out and vote, right? So I just wanted to point that out. But going back to Project 2025, I absolutely think it's scary. I think that most people who are paying somewhat attention to what's going on in this country are aware that there are forces that want to sort of take us back to some very, very dark times. And I think that particularly for my generation, but definitely my parents' generation and my grandparents' generation, who, as you know, fought the fight, right? Like, we came along and things were relatively, I'm not saying they were perfect, but we certainly didn't have to drink out of different water fountains, right? We certainly didn't have the life that our grandparents and great-grandparents had, right? Because of the work that they did. And so I oftentimes feel like us younger generations we take a lot of things for granted just because of when we came into this world and how things were. Again, acknowledging that definitely hasn't been perfect. We definitely, particularly as Black people, continue to struggle in this country, but it's nowhere near what our ancestors experienced, right? So I think, yes, is it a threat? To me, I think it absolutely is. But I think that we need to be paying attention, and this is, me on my soapbox, because I'm like, yay. Everybody's so focused on what's going on in D.C., but do you know what's going on in your own zip code? And so at the same time, it's like you look at a Project 2025, and for me, I'm looking at that and trying to translate that into local and state politics. So how does that show up on the local and state level? What does that mean at City Hall? What does that mean at your county government? What does that mean in your state, and your state government? And we need to be thinking about that.
That's right. And speaking of what's happening in your zip code, when we come forward, apparently Vice President Harris is to transfer nearly $25 million to help down-ballot Democratic candidates. The boost to House, Senate, and state-level candidates follows a $540 million fundraising haul from Vice President Harris over the past 6 weeks. We're going to get Jasmyne and Nabou's take on this and more. You're listening to First Things First on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.
More of First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
Oh, man. Looks like Bobby needs a ride to the airport again.
Grab the keys.
Who's taking Auntie and her friends to the swap meet?
Grab the keys.
How about we drop these boxes off at Miss Johnson?
Grab the keys.
Whether you're giving rides or hauling gear, you're all about getting things done. So do it all in a Chevy SUV. From the versatile Equinox and Sporty Blazer to the roomy Traverse, our lineup of SUVs will carry you through every adventure. All you have to do is...
grab the keys.
That's how we do. Head to your local Chevy dealer, where well-qualified buyers get 1.9% financing on all 2024 Malibu, Colorado, Blazer, Equinox, Trailblazer, and Traverse limited models. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive.
1.9% APR for 36 months. Monthly payment is $28.60 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment 15.8%. Must finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 7/1/24.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi,
I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like the style, though.
Tabitha Smiley's new book, The Covenant with Black America, 20 years later, is now on sale everywhere. This classic text shot to #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list almost 2 decades ago. If you have the original book, you will surely want to get this 20th anniversary edition with powerful new contributions from today's leading voices. This 20th anniversary edition presents a compelling blend of historical insights and contemporary urgency in this critical and unprecedented election year. Get your copy of The Covenant with Black America 20 years later today. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Stay Housed LA has the resources you need to know your rights and the legal support to back them up. The COVID-19 pandemic has cost people their jobs and livelihoods. This has left an estimated 1/3 of households not being able to make rent and facing losing their homes. This is a fear no one in our community should have to face. You have rights, though, and Stay Housed LA is here to help. Stay Housed LA is a partnership between the County of Los Angeles, the City of Los Angeles, and local community and legal service providers. Together, they provide tenants with the information and support needed to exercise their rights so they can remain safely in their homes. Find out more about your rights by participating in a virtual tenant workshop. Get the legal assistance you need. Find additional resources in Los Angeles County and the City of Los Angeles. Stay connected to Stay Housed LA County for updates. This and more at stayhousedla.org. Stay connected to Stay Housed LA for updates. This and more at stayhousedla.org. That's stayhousedla.org. Or call their hotline at 213-694-0040. We've got your black with a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Tips to help improve your credit score in 2024. Establishing credit is an important key to achieving financial health, but building a credit history from scratch can feel challenging since you need credit to build credit. First, what does it mean to build credit? All consumers have a score between 300 and 850. You want your score to be as high as possible as lenders look at your credit score to make loan and credit decisions. A good credit score shows you have a track record of borrowing money responsibly. Remember, it's never too late to build or rebuild your credit. This segment is sponsored by J.P. Morgan Chase & Company.
Broadcasting live from Leimert Park, USA. Welcome back to your home for unapologetically progressive radio, KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to First Things First with Dominique DiPrima. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, guest host in for Dominique, here in conversation with Jasmyne Cannick, Gen X journalist and campaign strategist, as well as Nabou Ramu, who is a Gen Z Afrocentric journalist, our resident Gen Z expert here today. We've been talking about this poll that was released. NBC News reporting that Gen Z voters are tracking towards Vice President Harris, with about a third supporting former President Trump. Lots of questions around the national election, the presidential election, that is. But as Jasmyne Cannick just reminded us, a lot of folks also paying attention to what's happening in their zip code, or at least should be. And apparently, the vice president is one of those folks, because her campaign and the Democratic National Committee plan to transfer nearly $25 million to support down-ballot Democratic candidates in state and federal races this year, a significant boost to those efforts following her record fundraising haul this summer. Jen O'Malley Dillon, the campaign chair, said, quotes, "If we want a future where every American's rights are protected, not taken away, where the middle class is strengthened, not hollowed out, and a country where our democracy is preserved, not ripped away, every race this November matters." Jasmine, is this music to your ears? A presidential contender that's saying, wait a minute, we got to do more to support folks down ballot?
I mean, yes, it is, but let's unpack that just a little bit. So that money is for specific offices, right? So House and Senate, some money I think is going to legislative candidates and gubernatorial and attorney general candidates. We're not talking about mayors, council members, district attorneys, county supervisors, and sheriffs, like at the more local level. We're talking about really those offices that a president would need to be in place to back her up once she assumes office. I'm not saying it's not a smart strategy, but I'm also like really aware that this money isn't going to trickle down to a race in Compton or a race in Inglewood, right? This money is specifically for really the federal and state level offices. And what I challenge listeners and folks who plan on voting to do is, as much as you know what Kamala Harris wore or what Donald Trump said, you need to know who your AG is, who your district attorney is, who your council member is, who your public intendant of your schools is, who your Board of Equalization member is. Like, you need to know all of those roles, because whatever they do is going to affect you much sooner and much quicker than anything coming out of Washington, D.C. And we have a tendency to look beyond our zip code into what's going on, particularly those of us in California, look at what's going on across the country in D.C., while all this stuff is happening right down the street from us. And we don't know about it until we get, an electric bill that's 3 times higher than it normally is. And we're scratching our head and cursing and screaming like, what happened? And so the way that we stop that from happening is we know our zip code and we know what's going on. And the fact that Biden stepped down and Harris has moved up is going to really help down ticket candidates, because it was Democrats who really were the ones in danger of not showing up to vote in November. And clearly the party knew that, so we had changes that were made. But now it's on us as voters to make sure and to understand we're not just voting for a president when we vote in November.
What's your reaction to this, Nabou?
I agree with Ms. Jasmine. I think that something that we do need to pay attention to is what's going on in our local communities, but not in a sense of praising, but in a sense of accountability. Because before we went on break, you mentioned Project 2025 and what we should fear and if we should not fear it. But I think one of our concerns is just the capitalists across the board that are really affecting our communities. You're saying to look outside of and look down the street, but just being a station that's located in Leimert Park, LA is a Democratic city. Leimert Park is a Democratic district area. And it's Black people, Democrats, that are evicting the locals out of their places of business. Kamala Harris said that she wants to rebuild the middle class. Even in the quote that you just spoke of, they also had used the term middle class and making sure that our rights are strengthened and not taken away. But a lot of us aren't in the middle class. A lot of people in LA are on Section 8. Just to still pay $1,200, $1,400 in rent. And LA is a Democratic city. People are getting evicted. People cannot afford their bills. A lot of us aren't in these classes that they speak of. A lot of people in LA haven't finished college, can't afford to finish college. Those are our issues that I think that we need to talk about on a more local level, because it's our own people that are hurting us in LA. Our own Black people who are capitalists that are hurting us. When are we going to talk about that? Or are we just going to act like it just doesn't happen? The Black elite needs to
Well, I mean, I think it's important for us to be specific in what our critique is and who our critique is of. And I think one of the points that Jasmine was making earlier, and point taken, is that there are a lot of different folks, for example, in elected office, who make decisions each and every day that make a material difference on our lives, that have a material difference on our lives, right? And so, if we don't know who's representing us, or at least says they are, on the school board or in the district attorney's office or city council, let alone the Oval Office, right? There's got to be some accountability there. And so you mentioned accountability, and I just want to note that accountability is also sort of a two-way street, like holding people in elected office accountable, but also holding ourselves accountable, right? And being solutions oriented, right? Look, there's a reason, and we can't take for granted, that LA may have a whole lot of Democrats that show up during elections, and may have a whole lot of Democrats representing its interests on all levels of government. But remember, Rick Caruso mounts a pretty vigorous campaign. Spent over $100 million to try and defeat now Mayor Karen Bass, right? And so let's not think that conservatives don't have power and influence, even in a place like LA. Jasmine, I want to give you the final word before we wrap up.
Okay, you're absolutely right, and that just reminded me that we have conservatives mounting a big campaign in LA right now to take our district attorney out, right? So and look, I should say this for folks that don't know, city and county offices are nonpartisan. Regardless of whether or not there's a Democrat or a Republican in office, we all have to live in these neighborhoods, no matter what our political party is. And so those offices are nonpartisan. You don't go vote for mayor and it says Democrat by a person's name. It just says their name. But you're absolutely right. It's a two-way street. We have a responsibility to make sure that we know what's going on just as much as folks in office have a responsibility to let us know what's going on. And again, I just want to remind people that whatever happens here in your zip code with local elected officials is going to affect you a lot faster than anything coming out of D.C. And you really need to pay attention, particularly as we go into November, who you're voting for and why. And then we all got to get ready to reelect our mayor in 2026, as well as choose a governor. So we got a lot of local stuff that we need to be paying attention to as well. I love that everyone's all focused on Kamala Harris and is super excited. That means nothing to me in a conversation if you can't even tell me who your mayor or council member is. I'm really giving you the side eye.
My thanks to Jasmyne Cannick and Nabou Ramu. Thank you for joining me here on First Things First with Dominique DiPrima. Please come back again soon.
Thanks for having me.
Peace and blessings.
You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580 with me filling in as the guest host for the incredible Dominique DiPrima. More when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Mike Moore. Now here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Vice President Kamala Harris is expected to announce an economic proposal to help small businesses today. She'll be on the campaign trail